Hey everyone, my name is Syed and I'm an enterprise sales engineer with Akamai. I'm going to show you how to get started with Enterprise Threat Protector, or ETP, and configure it for your organization. We'll quickly cover all of the important steps and ignore all of the other knobs and dials. Don't worry, we can revisit those advanced topics later, but for now, the main objective is to get you up and running as fast as possible. Before we get started, you'll need access to Akamai's Luna portal to manage ETP. You should have received credentials in your email or from your account team. I'll begin by going to control.akamai.com and entering my credentials. Next, I'll click on the Configure menu at the top and then click on Enterprise Threat Protector. Make sure to close any new user and announcements banners in this area. Now I can get started with configuring ETP for my organization. The first step is to define a location by clicking the plus icon here. I'll begin by entering a name for a particular building, office, campus, etc. Next, I will enter the public IP addresses for this location. I can enter individual IP addresses or an IP address range. Please note that the largest range allowed here is a /24. If you need anything larger, such as a /16, please contact your account team. Next, I'll leave the policy setting as is for now, and then click Save. Now I can go see all of my locations by clicking this Locations link. I can see the Manhattan location I just created, but I also see two additional locations listed: unidentified IPs and off-network ETP clients. Unidentified IPs is a catch-all group for IP addresses that are not associated with a location. I can choose to allow or deny requests from such IP addresses. Off-network ETP clients is a special location used for devices that have the ETP endpoint client running. Using the client allows devices to be protected even when they're roaming in such places like coffee shops or airports. One quick tip before I move on: if you ever need help, look for a question mark button like this one. It's available throughout the interface, and it is linked to the relevant documentation section at learn.akamai.com. The next step is to create a policy which tells ETP how my organization wants to handle threats. To create a policy, I'll click into the Policy section here, and I'll see a predefined policy for the unidentified location I saw earlier. But instead of modifying that special policy, I'd like to create a new policy for my organization. To do so, I'll click the plus icon here. I'll enter a name for this policy and then move on to the various threat categories ETP protects against. The threat categories are malware, phishing, command and control, and DNS exfiltration. Each of these categories have an info bubble available for more background. Next, the threat categories are classified into known or suspected, where known is a dedicated malicious domain, while suspected is a legitimate domain containing compromised pages. This allows me more flexibility in how I respond to possible threats. For example, I can choose to block known malware websites with an error page and to simply monitor suspected malware websites. More information about the threat responses is available here. I can also choose to enable alerting for any of these threats. Doing so will send real-time alerts to one or more recipient. I'll cover how to define these recipients shortly. There are also additional settings here for enabling safe search across Google and Bing, and for filtering YouTube results based on their restriction modes. Next, the custom security option is for importing threat feeds that my organization produces or that my organization subscribes to. Please use this option if you have such feeds. I can also define an acceptable use policy for content blocking. There are 18 content categories with various subcategories underneath. Each can be blocked or allowed based on my organization's requirements. The next critical step is to associate this policy with the location I created earlier. A policy can be associated with multiple locations, as you can see here, but each location can have only one associated policy. Now that I've created the policy, I can click Save. Notice that the pending changes count here went from 1 to 2. This is because all of the changes I've made so far, including the location and policy, are still pending. Note that new environments may have additional changes listed here. Those need to be deployed initially as part of the environment setup. Clicking Deploy will push the pending changes to the ETP network and make them active. This process should complete in less than a minute. The next step is to validate the policy I have just deployed. To do so, Akamai hosts several test domains that are usually accessible but can be blocked when using Enterprise Threat Protector. So going to this test site, Akamai ETP malwaretest.com, I see the demonstration landing page and that I'm not currently using Enterprise Threat Protector. Now I will update my device's DNS settings to use Enterprise Threat Protector. Note that I'm entering the primary and secondary DNS servers that were issued to my organization. Now I can go back to the same test site and see that it is being blocked with an error page, just as I configured in my policy earlier. This shows that the policy is working on my individual device, but to use this policy for the rest of my organization, I need to configure DNS forwarding. Doing so will forward my organization's DNS requests from my local DNS server to the recursive DNS servers I used earlier. Instructions for setting up DNS forwarding for all of the major DNS products, including Windows Server and Bind, are available on learn.akamai.com or through this link. Now that the initial configuration is complete, I'd like to cover areas that will support my configuration going forward. First, there are quick lists. This is a fast and easy way to allow or deny domains or IP addresses. For example, I could quickly block access to the domain that is listed in a phishing email that's going around. Notice the changes would need to be deployed if I chose to keep them. Next, I'll go to the Utilities section where there are more ways to manage and support my configuration. The first tab is for the Client Connector. This is where I can deploy and manage the endpoint client for Windows and OS X devices. Once deployed, the devices can be protected outside of my network in places like coffee shops and airports. Infected devices can also be identified by their internal IP address or machine name. The second tab is for network configuration. This is used in conjunction with the client connector to allow access to internal DNS suffixes or IP addresses. More information is available using the Help button. The third tab is for error pages. This section is for customizing the look and feel of the error pages that end users see when visiting restricted sites. Of course, I can upload a logo or customize the colors, but I can also enter help desk and ticket info. The fourth tab is for communications. This is where I can enter recipients that should receive real-time information, such as the alerts from our policies earlier, or other system notifications. The fifth tab is for scheduled reports. This section is for configuring a digest to be sent out to specified recipients. Note that this is not real-time information and is meant for scheduled delivery. I can choose to receive all events or only alerts. I can also choose a delivery schedule. When complete, I can click Save. The sixth tab is for the security connector. This is where I can deploy and manage a virtual appliance where malicious traffic will be sent to. It works in conjunction with the block sinkhole threat response. Once deployed, infected devices can be identified by their internal IP addresses. The seventh tab is for custom responses. This section allows me to configure third-party sinkhole devices. The eighth tab is for certificates. This section is for configuring TLS certificates when using the proxy feature. The next tab is Akamai support access, but note that it is blank in my demo environment. This tab allows me to grant Akamai support temporary access to my configuration. And the last tab is for deployment history, which tracks the deployed changes by the time and administrator. That covers all of the initial configuration plus a lot of the advanced configuration. I'll now move on to the monitoring section where I can see events and activity. The dashboard provides a high-level overview and the ability to slice and dice common reports. The events and activity sections allow me to dig deeper into each category. Exploring this monitoring section is helpful for high-level overviews and for low-level details. Another way to track down details in your environment is the intelligence section. This feature allows real-time querying for specific domains, showing current status and history. I can also use this area to report any domains that may be misclassified. The details will be sent to analysts for review. Now that I'm familiar with how to manage Enterprise Threat Protector, I can move on to creating additional users for the rest of my team. For that, I can click the Configure menu at the top and then click Manage Users and Groups. I can then enter the appropriate information to add the additional users. That concludes this initial walkthrough of Enterprise Threat Protector. For any additional questions, please contact MCNC at securityservices@mcnc.org. Thank you.